give them this message that it's okay to be a man.
It's not okay. It's necessary. What the hell are we going to do without men?
Professor Jordan B. Peterson has been one of the most influential personalities on the internet for the past 7 years now, and whether it's selling over 10 million copies of his book, amassing hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, and even making several appearances on the Joe Rogan podcast, his influence cannot be understated, and many young men especially have formed a near cult following around him. So why is this guy so influential to young men, and how did he even become popular to begin with? Well, I hope to answer both of those questions in this video and so much more. So let's start from the very beginning. On June 12th, 1962, Jordan was born into the small freezing town of Fairview, Alberta. He had a pretty typical upbringing with 2 parents and 3 siblings, but despite his stable family structure, he found himself addicted to alcohol and smoking, which he started at the young age of 14. During his teenage years, he would continue to drink and smoke and would be mixed up with some rather tough crowds. I mean, many of his friends dropped out of high school by the time they were only 15. Despite all of this, Jordan still managed to keep up with his studies and eventually got accepted into McGill University in Edmonton. It were here he would start implementing many of the core values he talks about into his day-to-day life. He would stop drinking, smoking, and become very serious about his academic goals. This drive and passion led him to publish 16 academic papers, which is still the record for students in grad school. Very soon he would climb the ranks and get his PhD in clinical psychology, using this position to continue his studies at Harvard and the University of Toronto. Okay, great, so now we know his backstory, but how did this translate into becoming a viral sensation and a world-renowned philosopher? Well, around 2016, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his party introduced Bill C-16 to the Parliament. The bill was very controversial as it had to do with free speech and specifically free speech regarding words about trans people. Amidst all the chaos that was brought upon by the bill, Jordan was staunch in his opposition to it, which led him into encounters like this.
I'm not going to talk about sexual politics. It's not my primary concern. The reason I'm defending freedom of speech, and the reason for that is quite straightforward.
Following today's proceedings of the Standing Senate Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs, today we continue our consideration of Bill C-16.
It seemed to me that the appropriate level of analysis was to look at the context of interpretation surrounding the bill.
Whether it was protest or the federal government itself, Jordan would fight against the bill at any means necessary. Now, the bill eventually did pass, but for Jordan, he certainly didn't lose, as even though he failed at killing the bill, he did succeed at getting people's attention. You see, videos of Jordan's opposition to Bill C-16 would spread throughout the internet like wildfire, leading to an eventual audience being built. Off this momentum, he would start doing podcasts, interviews, he would start posting his lectures more frequently to his YouTube channel, and even started to write a book. At this point, he did cement his place in internet history and continues to inspire people to this day. So you may be asking yourself, Noble, you haven't answered why young men are obsessed with Jordan Peterson. That is literally the title of the video. And you're right, loyal viewer, I haven't yet, but that's only because we needed context first, and you'll see what I mean soon enough. The modern young man has many struggles and issues they face on a daily basis, from addictions to drinking and smoking to feelings of hopelessness and no direction in life. Young men certainly have no shortage of struggles. But wait, doesn't that sound familiar? And if it does, that's no coincidence, as Jordan Peterson had the exact same struggles when he was younger as well. You see, this is Jordan's X factor. He's able to relate with these young men because he knows what it feels like to go through the exact same struggle. He didn't have a rich family with connections to Ivy League schools and has suffered from being undisciplined and has fallen ill to many bad habits before. Almost nothing was handed to him, and he had to work for just about everything in his life. This is why, even with all his fancy wording and sophisticated mannerisms, young men can latch onto him because they know at the end of the day, he isn't some snobby elitist. Another thing young men lack is courage and leadership, something in which the professor has shown on numerous occasions. Think back to when I talked about Jordan at the protest and parliament hearing. This not only took leadership, but also took a lot of courage, and I'll explain why. The University of Toronto, which is where the protest took place, is known for being a very liberal and progressive university. Yes, Jordan showed leadership for the people who opposed Bill C-16 by speaking in front of all the protesters. But you know what? That also took courage as well, because most of the people there were staunchly against him. I mean, they even broke his microphone and speaker. I mean, it was a hostile environment. And I'm not trying to pick on the liberal college students, as if they went into the middle of Alabama and started yelling about abortion, then I would consider that pretty brave as well. But the most important thing Jordan Peterson manifested while protesting Bill C-16 is that prominent figureheads in society will not automatically go along with whatever the government does. This message by Jordan sent ripples throughout the minds of many people, and especially for young men who, like I said before, lack courage and leadership. This really lit a fire in their soul, a fire that was yearning to be lit again. Okay, so we went over the social factors and character values on why so many young men look up to Jordan Peterson. But remember, he is an expert in the field of psychology and has been working on his study for the majority of his life. So let's see how his philosophy plays into young men. Now, if I were to go over his entire philosophy, that video would take 12 hours or something like that, not to mention that I'm nowhere near smart enough to understand all of what he teaches. But in its most simple form, here I go. When we are born, we're born into a world of pain and suffering, with no clear path or destination. Now, you either have two choices in this world. You can either 1, give in to your impulsive desires and avoid your responsibilities, which will only lead to further suffering in the future in exchange for short-term gratification, or 2, focus on putting your life together, which will be extremely hard and may even make you question your entire existence, but will somewhat relieve suffering on a global scale, a local scale, and an individual scale, even if that relief is only a tiny amount. Both options are difficult in different ways, but to achieve any sort of self-satisfaction in life, there is only one right answer. Now that you have made the decision to put your life together, there will be a very long road ahead of you, so it's best not to set your expectations super high, but instead focus on small incremental steps, as they are much more attainable and put together will result in a much bigger goal becoming completed. This is why Jordan Peterson always preaches to clean your room, as even though it may seem trivial in the moment, you at least accomplished something and have set up some sort of order and responsibility for yourself. Now, in 3 to 5 years, if you stick with your plan and take small steps towards it, then you will almost certainly be in a much better place, and your overall suffering will dwindle, not only for yourself, but also for the people around you. Okay, before the Peterson bros flood my comment section, yes, I get it. This was not all of his philosophy. I mean, this was not even close to all of his philosophy, but I think it was a good oversimplified version of some of his most important ideas. You see, if you're a young man that has no direction in life, then when you hear these words, they act like cocaine for you. Yes, it won't be all sunshine and rainbows, but at least it's a realistic outlook on the world and gives men a purpose to work towards. For my closing thoughts, I will say this. Young men feel betrayed in this modern era for so many reasons. I mean, you can bring up dating, having their manhood viewed as toxic, lower wages, and so on. They're taught at a young age many things that go against their biology, so it should come as no surprise they eventually lack important masculine traits like how to be a good father or how to lead a family. This is why Jordan Peterson is essentially therapy for them, because not only can he lead and relate with young men, but also provides them a realistic vision on how they can become real men and get their act together. Above all, it seems like there's at least someone for young men and not against them, which, considering how much loneliness exists for young men, is honestly a blessing in itself. Alright, that's all.